about...
Is he going to come in?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's fine, you chop him out now, come on, let's do it.
30 seconds.
Yeah, wait.
Oh, Bizzy, man.
Nothing changes with this guy, man. Special effects, man.
I think it's happening in the studio. Come on, let's get on with it, man. You just see, I'm ready, I'm warm.
Was there ever a time when you were all in the studio together?
Yeah.
All of you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's been.
Because there always seems to be two of you working on a track, or one of you.
There was only two chairs in the studio.
Oh, right.
No, it was we would catch up in the studio. Like I've been in there while the guys were doing stuff.
Yeah.
And that.
So, I'm looking at my phone. I'm not being rude. I've got questions on my phone. So.
Do it
far away, man.
I mean, like, for the most part, we used to hire the studio out. That was how we used to work on the downtime. When we weren't making tunes, we used to hire the studio out. So that's how we kind of come into connection with working with Roy, because we met Roy, we bounced off with each other.
I'm not recording, by the way.
Yeah, let's quickly see.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about sort of what was you doing music-wise before you started playing records? How did you get into music?
Okay, so I started off doing hip hop mixing and stuff. I came from the R&B and hip hop background. I just did it for fun. I done my first DJ set in Raquel's night spot, which was in Basildon. And the name Bizzy B came about when we didn't have a name for a flyer. We was doing like a little kind of college party feel, like not college, but like, 17, 18-year-olds or whatever. I was doing this little party. And a friend of mine, Mad Ragga John, he's known as Mad Ragga John. He started Madhouse Records, right? This is back in the day. And he turned around and says, okay, he got the flyer done. He turned around and says, I've called you Bizzy because your name's Brian and getting busy on the decks. And I was like, all right, yeah, whatever, man. And then that name just sort of stuck from there. And then just progressed into sort of DJing from there. I mean, I've always been into mixing and stuff. I used to mix in my bedroom and all that before we got into doing rave scene and all that. Earthquake. Yeah, so I always got into DJing, and that's my background, man. I've always been into music. I've always loved music. I was mad about music. I actually had a job as a messenger, walking up and down London Wall. And I remember a couple of times after work, I got this flipping rucksack, and I got this 12-volt battery, connected a car graphic equalizer to it, and then cut the wires, wired it out to a set of headphones. And I was walking around with this flipping music, like blaring, that you could probably hear from 100 yards down. Like walking around, I had my graphics in my flipping rucksack, playing this music, killing it. I've always been mad about music. I've always been the first person on the dance floor to just start dancing in a flipping party. And I didn't care whether I looked like a complete arse, but that was me, you know what I mean? At a party, that was before I got into the rave scene. I was always the first one on the dance floor.
What was the name of the thing in Basildon?
Oh crap, man! I know we did a party in Pitsea. That was one place that we did.
Okay.
And it was just like flat parties. It didn't really have a name as such. It was just like give out flyers to everyone, and everyone turned up, and we were just playing hip hop and stuff. And I remember when I first used to do mix CDs and all that, sort of mix tapes. I used to pass them to my friends and stuff, and they couldn't believe it. Like it was like, that's not your mixing. You're having a laugh, mate. There's no way you can nick that from someone. You said, but, and it was like flattering to hear that, and it just to know that what I was doing was working, and I just stuck with it. But it's always been a passion. Like I played to one person, 3 people, 5 people all night. It wouldn't bother me. You know what I mean? It's just as long as I could play music and there was someone there to appreciate it. And sometimes I play on my own. I remember playing with a realistic mixer. Yeah. Do you remember those old Tandy realistic mixers? I had to put my headphones on, and you could press the Q button and hear the left and right mix coming out, and you could literally do a tight mix tape just from flipping sitting in the mixer, and no one else could hear you. And I got into buying my records and spent every penny buying my records. I came from literally nothing. I came from sort of sleeping on my mate's floor, eating flipping, potatoes for breakfast, buying 10p potatoes and 5p flipping £1 potatoes and a packet of beans, and flipping eating that, saving the potato peels, frying them up for the following day. So I came from literally nothing, spent every penny I almost every penny, apart from to be able to fund that, on literally on records. And records has been my life, and record collection built up. Always wanted to be a DJ, always looking for that, for that break. And that's basically the introduction to it.
Where were you when you were kind of I mean, did it take you a long time to put like mixtapes together and learn to DJ and stuff like that, or do you feel like it came quite naturally to you?
No, it took a lot of practice.
Yeah.
I always. So the first time I ever saw this guy, his name was Dennis, I think his name was, and I saw him mix two tracks together. It was Dotty Green, I Want You, and I saw him on the decks. He had a pair of techniques, and he'd done that, and I just said, "Shit, man, I've got to learn to do that, man. That is bad, man." I just loved it, and. Since then, I sort of tried to get a pair of decks, but I could never afford a pair of techniques. So what I did was I got a pair of old Garrard decks, the 12-volt ones, and I bought these variable resistors, and I put that across the power supply, and I was able to turn the power down and up, and that gave me control over literally the speed of how fast the deck went.
Yeah,
I got 2 of those.
So you changed the wiring of the deck in order to make it work?
Yeah, because it didn't have pitch controls in it, so I fixed that in, and I managed to practice with those 2. And then one day, it was I remember the 2 tracks. It was like it's Marshall Jefferson, Can You Something House or whatever, and there was another record, Crush House, right? And I remember getting the 2 records put together, and then all of a sudden they started to mix, and I was like, holy shit, it's mixing. And I remember that night I stayed up all night because I was so scared that I'd forget how to mix by the morning, so I kept on trying it over, practice, and then I went to, from there I managed to figure out how to mix 2 records together, and that's how I managed to learn. And then from there, practicing almost every day, and just discovered new things as I went along,
Do you think that, had you always been involved in electronics and stuff like that, or just fiddling around with stuff?
Yeah, well, from the age of young, I mean, since I was a kid, I've always been interested in electronics, how things work and opening up stuff. I was always pretty nifty at fixing stuff. I remember one time as a kid, I got in trouble with my mum, because I literally opened up her radio to see how it worked. And I remember the one thing I could never put back together was the tuner part of it, where and it had some sort of weird string thing that went round this way and that way.
Take the coil off.
And I took the thing off of it, right? And then I couldn't put it back together. So in the end, my mum was coming home at a certain time from work, and I was like, oh shit, man, she's coming home. Right, okay. So I just put it back together and I put it on. And I was sitting there. It was only a matter of time before my mum went to change the radio station, and it was just stuck on this radio station. It wouldn't go anywhere. And obviously she had to hire a proper guy to come down and fix it, and I got in trouble for it. But yeah, I've always been into it. From school, I didn't do too well in my exams because my schooling, moving about. I was from Trinidad to England, and I kind of ended up falling back a year in school. So when I actually left school, I wanted to do electronics, and there was no opportunity. It's not like now where you've got the internet. Like, we're living in the greatest time ever for information to learn stuff, but back then you couldn't. There was no way, unless you had an encyclopedia that flipping done a college course or had some sort of information or whatever, you was nowhere to find out. So I went to I'd done a YTS in electronics. At the same time, I've always been good at fixing stuff. I had a market stall where I used to buy TVs, right? These TVs, I used to buy them at auction for like £1 each, because nobody would buy them in the auction because you turn the switch and they wouldn't come on. And for the most part, it just needed a little fuse changing, or there was some dry joints on the actual soldering, and I used to get my soldering iron and just fix up the joints on it and stuff, and bang, it used to come on. The ones that never used to work, I used to sell them on at cost to people that like to export for parts and stuff. And we had a market store, and that was that we used to sell stuff at, down Hackney Market. That was the known place for selling stuff. We was going down there, and I was cleaning up down there basically. And I remember one day I got a generator, and the generator itself was there to show everyone the TVs were working. And what happened, I was standing there with the generator now on, showing everyone. I've got this big crowd around me buying TVs. But all of a sudden the generator surged, and all the power supplies on the TV started going bang, 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 bang. And you would see people scattering, man. It was just nuts. But yeah, I've always been into electronics, man, from day dot, man.
Well, I was just wondering, like, going back to the I suppose, like, hip-hop, is that true for everyone? Like, true for...
Me, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been into music. I've always been into music. I mean, I liked more of the soul stroke jazz, stroke David Bowie kind of thing. That was where my music background came from. And then obviously, met Bizzy, and it kind of changed the whole thing. So where I was kind of into this poppy kind of orientated music, he kind of brought me into the dance area and just changed the whole way.
So do you think that was there like a kind of watershed between, I guess, like guys like you sort of involved in DJing, what I'm trying to say is like, what was the crossover between hip hop and like dance?